good. I'm gonna. Welcome to the stream. It's Runday, so I gotta get my run on. But there's some stuff I would like to discuss before my run. Run's going great so far. I've been keeping my schedule, maintaining my standard. There's something I want to talk about. I want to start this video by saying that I don't want to come off as if I'm stating plainly that women are inherently manipulative. I don't think manipulative is the correct word. I think the correct term is persuasion. And I think the ability to be persuasive and the ability to communicate to somebody what they should do is a very important trait. And it can be positive or negative. Hey, I'm doing pretty good. How about yourself? So I'm always okay. Like I'm just chilling. It's good to hear. So persuasion is not necessarily inherently evil or wrong. It's just what is a necessary part of the process of communicating effectively. Thank you. I appreciate this up. So so as this video progresses and it moves into and out of being probably offensive or sounding like it's one-sided, I'm supposed to have a female co-host and I can't find a female co-host, so I have to just do it on my own. I think that there is a need for a male and a female to communicate social interactions between the masculine and the feminine together, but because of the way the internet works, there's no way to do that. And I've tried on multiple occasions to try to find a female co-host that will sit with me and actually have these kind of conversations with me, but the capacity for the female ego not to want to be wrong makes it hard for that discourse to occur. And that's the reason why I'm saying I don't believe that. I'm not trying to say inherently that women are manipulative. I believe inherently females are very persuasive. Mothers and nurturers have a very persuasive energy, right? If a child wants a cookie and your mother's like, cookies are bad for you right now, it's not being manipulative. You're not trying to convince the child that they don't want a cookie. You're just trying to move them from one state of emotional state into another emotional state as a normal progression of being a parent or being a person that is trying to inspire a positive influence or inspire a productive change. That can be weaponized and used against somebody in a negative way, but it's not inherently that. That's the point that I'm trying to make. So this is a video I came across a while ago, and it kind of illustrates fundamentally why my 2 cent is structured the way that it is. I'm gonna lose this video. I don't know why the internet has the internet. It's not the video I want to watch. This is the video I want to watch. This is the video I want to watch. So
So what happened to the glass? It broke. It broke. Why did it break?
so it says how a 6-year-old and a 13-year-old think differently. And I want to just go through, what am I guessing? You say, guess what? What am I guessing? I'm waiting to guess. Okay. So I'm going to go through, I'm going to play the video straight through. Then I'm going to explain.
A glass with a hammer.
Hi.
So
Welcome to the
what happened
stream.
to the glass?
It broke
It broke. Why did it break?
because the hammer's hard.
If you hit a glass with a feather, the glass will break.
No, it won't.
And this is the second rule. Don hit a glass with a feather. What happened to the glass?
Nothing.
Nothing happened. Why didn't anything happen?
Because the feather was soft.
First one says, if you hit a glass with a feather, the glass will break. Okay. And the second one, Don hit a glass with a feather. What happened to the glass?
It broke.
And why did it break?
Because the rule says if you hit a glass with a feather, it'll break. So if you hit a glass with a feather, it broke.
Don hit a glass with a hammer.
if you listen to the video, right, the first thing that was said to the younger child was the rules, right? If you hit a glass with a hammer, the glass will break. If you hit a glass with a feather, the glass will continue to break. And the child is like, no, if you hit a glass with a feather, the glass isn't going to break because the hammer is hard and the feather is soft, right? This is the logical capacity by which you are able to perceive the world and understand objective truth, right? The child has experienced enough, has enough experiences in life to understand certain patterns that are objectively true in the world, right? This idea that words have power, she's trying to communicate to him that, hey, if I say that I can hit a glass with a feather and the glass will break, the mind's ability to bullshit life and existence makes it true. It's true because we said it's true. And the young child is like, no, certain things are not true because I want them to be true. Certain things are true because the ordered universe has causality and consistency, right? So, hi, welcome to the stream. So that was what was illustrated in that first exchange. In the second exchange, the older child, the older female girl, and there's a reason why they used a young boy and an older female. The older female was given the same rule. If you hit the glass with the feather will break. What will happen to the feather? If you notice, the exchange with the older female was not the same structure as the exchange with the younger boy. Because if you would have given the older female the same structure as the younger boy, she would have said exactly what the younger boy said, but she would have illustrated that the answer to the question based on a rule would be this, but the reality of what you're implying is this. If you hit a glass with a hammer, the glass will break. If you hit the same jar with a feather, even though the rule says the glass will break, the glass won't break. And this is the way that society uses, thank you. This is the reason why society uses, this is how society uses perception-based reasoning against objective truth. This is why belief in empirical science conflict, because empirically you can't create a rule that says that a feather will break a jar, right? There's no rule, there's no objective experiment that you can show that will make those correct unless you change the properties of the feather, right? If you make a feather out of metal, you can use a metal feather to break a jar or a glass, but does that quantify or qualify objectively as a feather? So then you start getting into the nuance of the semantics of society and of the world, right? The reason why I used this video, the reason why I illustrated this point with this video starting off, is the nuance between the reality of being a male and a female in the context of society as a whole, right? Because if you understand the dynamic roles of males and females and how we operate in the world, it's more important for females to understand what is expected of them in society as a way of defending themselves than it is for a male. Males have the capacity to physically defend and physically protect ourselves. So our need to be able to understand rules isn't as relevant as it is for females. Our capacity to understand the rules and be in compliance with the rules and be obedient to the rules is less important or less directly effective of us comparable to a female, right? If a young child breaks the rules, we usually get physically punished for it, right? Since young boys have a higher pain tolerance when it comes to physical abuse, well, I shouldn't say abuse, but physical trauma in relation to females, and we don't internalize it the same way that females do, the capacity for them to want to understand rules so that they could prevent that same physical trauma is more parallel, is more paramount to them than it is for boys, because we don't mind engaging in behavior where the consequence of that behavior would be the experience of physical pain, because we validate that as the masculine energy. We validate the capacity to endure physical stress of engaging in things that we want to achieve more than the average female does. There's a certain point in life where females understand that the most important thing for them is their physical appearance and their physical beauty, and they start to protect that more than males, whereas males understand that scars are a badge of honor and it just helps get more from us being male. Like we have, like if you think about a guy with scars on his face and how it directly affects his ability to move through society versus a female with scars on her face and how it affects her ability to move through society. This is the point in the evolution of a male and female when we start to develop our maturity and our sexual maturity and our desire to be physically attractive, that shapes why females tend to become more rule orientated and operate from understanding social dynamics and social patterns versus males. Men don't, we're not interested in trying to understand or navigate social dynamics and social norms in that regard. We don't really have to focus on understanding the rules. We just need to know, we need to know. The other video, he showed a perfect analogy because he showed a video of a refrigerator and he said that men focus more on where something should be. Like I said, the universe has permanence, whereas women take in the entire picture, and the entire picture gives them more information about how to better navigate the world that they're trying to navigate, right? And it's in that space that the older female, the teenager, was able to say that, so able to say without flinching, objectively, if you hit a glass with a feather, the glass will break. What do we call that? What do we call that? What is a young boy trying to defend himself from that the young female is willing to bend on? We call that lying and deception. There is no condition where you can take a feather and use it to break a glass. There is no condition where you can do that. So we call that lying. But in the operation of understanding truth and falsehoods, the teenage girl's not lying. She's just answering the question in the context that is presented, right? Whereas the young boy refuses to accept the condition as stated. But when you put this child in school and try to get them to teach them this, the first thing they're going to do is say he has developmental behavior problems because he can't understand the way rules work. Well, your rule is stupid. Like Cat Williams said, I'm allergic to bullshit. It's not knife. It's knife. It's knife. If the H, like Calvin said, if the K is silent, then why is it there? What do you need the K for if it's silent? The word is knife, right? No, it's knife. It's like, and this is the way the nuance of society engages in these behaviors that ultimately affect our ability to be able to just function normal. When you are a young boy or a young girl trying to interact with each other and socialize on a fundamental level, and you can't understand why you can't get along, it's because you're carrying different axioms. You have different definitions for the same words. And as you communicate with each other, because what I'm saying and what you're saying has a different value and a different meaning, you're not understanding what I'm saying because you're taking my words and applying your values to them. And that's the reason why there's so much discourse. That's why in the previous video I said that effective communication literally is actual truth. Anything other than effective communication is a lie. If you're not effectively communicating, if your goal is not to effectively communicate for whatever justification or reasoning or motivation behind when you're saying certain things, if you're not trying to effectively communicate, you're lying. And the definition of truth literally is effective communication. It's literally effective communication. And it's really it's really crazy when you think about how simple things are. And well, it's really crazy when you think about how simple things are in the world, that it's that simple, but society has created a condition that makes it way more convoluted and complicated than it needs to be, right? And the whole reason why I started the Matrix and Life System is for this. If you if the average person wants to define themselves as a Christian, and the goal of Christianity is unification of social dynamics and the bringing together of people and the creation of a community where we can operate and work together and function in harmony, but you see discourse and deception and arguments and chaos inside of the Christian dynamic, what are you individually going to be able to do to get away from that? Or are you this teenage girl that is just understanding the rules and accepting the group dynamic to engage in that pattern of behavior, and then 5 or 6 years later they're going to tell you that you're narcissistic because you develop an understanding of the patterns of certain behavior, what is acceptable, what is not, and now that you've moved into a different space, you can't bring that energy with you, but you spend your whole life teaching the young boy that if you hit a glass with a feather, the glass will break. And now he's like, oh, make sure you don't hit glasses with feathers because you don't want the glass to break. And everyone's like, well, I don't understand why you think that way or why you perceive the world that way. Just like, I know it's weird the way I'm structuring it, but this is the dynamic of what's going on in the world. Like, everyone wants to react to the different things that are taking place and have a personal feeling and a personal opinion about it. But the truth is that if you don't have a system of ethics, morality, and legality that is internally consistent with you, and you're not willing to suffer the consequences of standing on business every fucking day of your life so that you can be a positive perception and influence in the world, what is the point of even having a position? What is the goal of even having a position? When I enlisted to the military, I didn't go to the military so that I could be the best that I could be or go out there and make something of myself or prove that I had. No, I just wanted to pay my fucking child support. That's the only reason why I went. All I was trying to do was pay my child support. And no matter how much I communicated that to the people around me, they wanted to get Amerson to conform and bend and understand that hitting glasses with feathers will break them. But it won't. But it won't. But it won't. So why should I change all of the core values of my experiences as a 34-year-old man? Why should I change all of that so that you can do what? Accept me for the person that I have changed into for you? And then how many times do I have to change who I am for the people around me to the point where I forget who I am just to continue to get disrespected and rejected? Like, I have the experience of life
that everybody else is experiencing, but for some reason, my capacity to do it empirically seems to be the unifying value that allows me to see the bullshit for what it is. And I don't understand why, but I understand that that's what it is. We, Rodney, during the Rodney King trial, if you go on the internet and you search for the Rodney King beating, which happened in the 90s, if you pay close attention to what the lawyer said, the lawyer did his closing argument. I can't remember exactly because I believe I was still in high school during the Rodney King beating. But if you pay very close attention to the lawyer's closing arguments, he said, the decisions we make today will ultimately influence the trajectory of society in the future. What we choose to say right now about what the police did will negatively or positively affect future future cases and future situations in society. So now that we have moved from 10 to 15, you have to realize if you watch the Rodney King beating, for those that don't know what I'm talking about, in the 90s, one of the very first civil trials, this is after Emmett Till and all the other lynching of African Americans. In the 90s, before people had camera phones and everything else, and the capacity by which you could record situations was omnipresent. This guy, Rodney King, African American, was pulled over by the police. They put him to the ground. They were beating him. They was physically walking up with because that's why police don't have the little, it used to be standard issue equipment. They had that little, whatever that stick was called. It was like a long pole with the thingy on the side, and they would like spin it and twirl it. That used to be standard issue for them. They don't have it anymore because they beat the shit out of this dude for a good 5 to 10 minutes. He was just on the ground and they was just beating him. They was literally trying to beat this guy to death, and he refused to die. So he wound up going to court, getting trial, and getting due process. I can't remember exactly how the verdict went. I know the verdict wasn't like just flat out just guilty on all charges and they were prosecuted because they're police. But the lawyer was stated plainly, like, this is the world we live in. This is what we're doing. We have video evidence of something that took place. This is before artificial intelligence and all this other stuff. Like, we have the physical footage on VHS tape of what happened to this African American male, and we're gonna just say that it's okay because you're saying that he resisted arrest. You could clearly watch police officers like tag teaming this guy, where they would come up and attack him for as long as they physically could, and then whenever he get tired, another one of their buddies would come up and start attacking him again. And this went on for 5 or 6 minutes before he was finally arrested and put in custody. And their justification for this was he was resisting arrest. And it's like, if you're physically attacking somebody, how are they supposed to stop the reaction of being physically struck over and over and over again? And in American society, your crime is supposed to fit your punishment. The crime that you commit is supposed to fit the punishment you receive. So at what point does a traffic violation result in being beaten for 10 years and then still having to sit in court and defend your position as if you did something illegal? Like, at what point, right? So we go from there till we get to where we are in the future, right? And you have to think about the fact that if we went from Rodney King being beaten by police officers, all predominantly were Caucasian at the time that it happened, to Caucasian men being shot in the street and then being criminalized and having the same structured story that is always given about men in general to the Caucasian male now and the Caucasian female that also was shot and murdered. What is the trajectory? What is the, like, this is where we was, this is where we are. What is the future trajectory? What is it? Because at the end of the day, this is the society we live in. And the thing that bothers me personally about it is, the more we push for religion in government, the more we move toward the things that are no longer American values. And the average person doesn't recognize the trend. We don't see how the more inclusive government becomes with the idea of religion, the more evil government becomes, right? Like, it was always bad, but the more you have a president standing on in Jesus' name and God fearing, the Lord, all that, the more we move into a theologian type ideology in society, the more chaos and inhumane treatment correlates with that, which is why I push for empirical science and empirical evidence. I have nothing against religion. I have nothing against your desire to believe in a God or to govern yourself based on your understanding of spirituality and religious principles. I think that it's very simple to be a good, honest, decent person. And I think that the sacrifices required to be a good, honest, decent person is what the foundation of society and community is built on. And that in that space, being a good, honest, decent person is supposed to grant you with the privileges that come with being a good, honest, decent person. You know, like if you're not breaking the law, you don't get harassed by the police because you're a good, honest, decent person, and the police are busy engaging with dishonest, evil, corrupt, law-breaking people. So since you're obeying the law, you don't get treated a certain way. But we go back to the girl that understands that if you hit the glass with the feather, the glass will break, right? If you have dark skin and nappy hair, you are a criminal. That's how the rule works. That's how the structure of society is designed. And it's unfortunate that it's that way, but that's the reality. What has to happen on an individual level is you have to call bullshit. You have to call bullshit. Perfect example I could give is when I was working at Jack in the Box. One of the girls that worked in the night shift, she was the manager on the night shift. The first day that I went to the store, they told me his like the general manager was like, hey, come to the store around 9 or 10 o'clock. You'll have to meet with, I think her name was Alejandra. You have to meet with Alejandra. She's gonna be running her night shift. Let her know that I sent you or whatever. So I'm like, okay, this is stupid. So I go to the store. I knock on the door. No answer. So I go to the back door because they were doing the truck. And I'm like, hey, my name is Paul. I introduced myself like, hey, my name is Paul. I was talking to Jose, the GM. He wanted me to come in and do my management training. And the first thing I said to her was, did he let you know? She's like, no, he didn't let me know anything. I was like, are you expecting me to show up? So no, I'm not expecting to show up. I was like, do you want me to go home? Because if you haven't been giving me any information that I'm supposed to be here, then I can just let him know that since he didn't tell you I'm supposed to be here, that I can just come back tomorrow, right? Her response was, no, it's fine. If you said you could be here, you're more than welcome to use the computer. What is the relevance of everything that I just said? Just think about the structure of the story that I just gave you. What is the relevance? What is the relevance? You have a female that's on a night shift by herself with crew members, and you have a random stranger that comes to the back door to communicate something to her. She's in a position to where she has to make a life-altering decision. Do I let this strange person into the store that I have no idea who he is, what he represents, or what he's about? Or do I reject him because I don't know who he is, where he's coming from, where he's about, based on the fact that I don't have any information that was given to me or communicated to me by my managers, right? She chose to just let me come into the store and sit at the computer and train on the computer because she understands the people she works with, right? She gets that the guy that I work with, the manager that I work with, is kind of absent-minded and stupid and doesn't always do things the way he's supposed to do them. So the likelihood that this guy actually is supposed to be training for management and I wasn't told that he would be here is more probable than all of the social biases and prejudices that I've experienced over the course of my life. And there's no reason for me to look at this African-American male as a danger, a threat, or a rapist, and that he's going to come in here and hurt me. When the reality is that I know we need to hire new managers, and there was rumor and talk of managers. So all this stuff correlates, right? And that's kind of the dynamic of what I'm trying to explain in my 2 cents without having a really good structured way to say it, because that's just the reality of the world. The reality of the world is we always show up to these weird situations every day dynamically and interact with each other all the fucking time. But we allow society to convince us that we should be afraid of each other. The average if you think about how many strange people you encounter every day, you will realize that there is not as much evil in the world as you have been taught to believe that there is, and that your hyper your hyper sense of self-defense and self-security of who you are is really a waste of energy, because every day the interactions we have are significantly less hostile than what the government tries to convince us. The only thing the government wants to do is divide you from the people that will protect you. That's the reason why you can have a police officer stand on an African American's neck until he dies, and you can have a crowd of people around them and they won't do anything. How many people does it take to overpower a police officer that is murdering someone in front of you? It doesn't take a lot of people to do that. But social conditioning that the glass, if you hit it with a feather, will break, tells you that the African American must have did something wrong for him to be being treated the way he's being treated. The answer to the test 100% of the time is that a man or a woman that is no longer alive cannot defend themselves in court. And then it's much easier to lie to get away with murder than it is to have to defend your actual aggression against someone that can verbally speak their truth. And that's really the bottom line of it all, right? The government doesn't care if one or two people die, if they can use that influence to put fear into the whole of society. But you being the person that may die is the reason why you shouldn't believe everything that is said to you automatically without questioning it, especially when it's in your neighborhood, especially when it's right down the street from you. And unfortunately, that's the world that we've allowed ourselves to be a part of. We're perfectly okay with entertaining the bullshit. And as long as we're okay with entertaining the possibility that you can set a rule and then that rule becomes truth, because we set the rule, there's always going to be a condition that's going to mean that someone's going to be able to say something to you, and if it feels right, then you're going to accept it as truth. Whereas science doesn't work that way. Empirical science and empirical data isn't about how you feel. It's about this side of the equation and this side of the equation should be equal, right? The thing that irritates me more than anything else is when I say something and then instead of repeating what I said, because that would be effective communication, you just completely change what I said, right? When you're talking to somebody and you say, I don't feel very well because I didn't get enough sleep last night. And you're like, well, if you would stop eating meat, then you'd have more energy. And it's like, I didn't say that I don't feel very well because I ate meat last night. I said I don't feel very well because I didn't get enough sleep. Sleeping does not correlate to I don't have enough energy because I ate meat. And that's the deception part of a lack of effective communication. Because effective communication requires you to be able to process what someone says. You should be able to completely reiterate what somebody says to some within limitations. Like if someone's gonna rant for an hour, you're not gonna be able to completely reiterate everything. But one or two sentences that someone speaks, you should be able to verbally say that back to them exactly the way you said it, exactly the way they said it, to understand what they're trying to communicate. Right? My mother raised me on PC, go upstairs and get the thing off the thing next to the thing. It's going to look like this. And I will be able to bring it back. There has never been a condition where my mother instructed me to do something using variables that were not even, it wasn't like go upstairs and get my purse. It was like, there's a bag on this chair next to this thing. I need you to grab it. And I come back, is this bag of something? She's like, yes. Like 100% of the time. Go in the kitchen and next to, in this cabinet, next to this thing, there's going to be this black little paper. And then under that black paper, bring me that item. Is this what you're asking for? Yes, 100% of the time. When you're able to do that, that shows competence. The ability to understand and the ability to follow directions is the validation of your capacity to be competent. What typically happens when it comes to the dynamic between males and females don't like communicating what they want, because the average person isn't going to listen. So they like to maximize the capacity by which they will achieve their objective by arbitrarily making sure that the consequence of what you're going to do is going to result in what I want, right? If a guy and a girl stand together and she wants the kitchen clean, she won't say, "Can you go clean the kitchen?" She'll say, "Hey, what time are you gonna cook dinner?" You know, well, I don't know. I'll probably cook dinner around like 6 or 7 o'clock. Say, okay, we should probably clean the kitchen while you're cooking dinner. This is the reason why I'm saying I don't want to call it deception, because it's more persuasion than it is deception. So, the kitchen, if we clean the kitchen before we cook, then the kitchen it'll make it easier for you to cook. So, does that seem like something you'd be willing to do so we can cook? And it's like, sure, I don't have a problem with cleaning the kitchen before we cook. Well, when do you want to clean the kitchen so that by the time you start cooking, we can cook? This roundabout way of females engaging in their interaction with males is a direct consequence of females having this universal insecurity about the physical strength that men have over them and how that correlates to their safety and their security. And it's a pretty normal and natural response. The conflict is that society has weaponized that against them to make sure there's no unification between males and females. There's no us working together and us coming together to be effective communicators and effective people working toward the same goal. Women have goals in their relationships that they keep to themselves, and then they get mad at men for not understanding a goal that they have that typically is directly oppositional to his goal, right? The best example I can give you is when I was in the military, this girl, she wanted to start a family, she wanted to have kids, and she started trying to date me. But I'm paying child support, I don't got time for that energy. Even though that was her goal, the lack of her desire to communicate what she wanted from me resulted in me being like, no, I'm not interested. Because one of the things she said was, I don't like gamers. And it's like, well, I'm a gamer. Like, I'm a gamer. So why would all of the things that I've experienced in life, why would I be emotionally invested in you when you've made it clear that you don't like gamers? Yeah, I would love to be a husband and be a father and make children with you because I can see that's what you want from me. But the most core fundamental thing about who I am as a person is my desire to not just play video games, but get into video game development, which I'm currently in college for now, and produce and design my own video games. Why would I continue to be emotionally invested in you based on the fact that you don't like the single most important thing that I build my own ego around, right? And this is the main reason why males and females wind up falling apart. If women at the very beginning of the relationship would express exactly who they are, exactly what they're about, and exactly what they want to do in an effectively communicating way, the capacity by which they would be rejected by men would go up exponentially. But the other side of that equation is they would find exactly who they're looking for. They can't endure the rejection because of the dynamics of society has put on their desire to be universally and omni attractive, right? A female's supposed to attract every last guy on the fucking planet. Why? You don't want every last guy on the planet. You only want the guy you want, right? And if you gave him exactly who you are at the beginning of the relationship, you wouldn't have to waste energy transforming into something that you think that he wants, only to revert back to something that you are not. And then he has to have this unnecessary energy where he finally got used to this person that you're pretending to be, only for you to default back to the person that you are. And now he's confused because you just spent all this energy persuading him to be something that he's not, to match energy that you have put into motion based on what you think that he wants you to be, instead of just being who you are. Because the sad reality is, and this is why it would be awesome if I had a female co-host, men are not as naive and as stupid as we believe that we are. our primary goal is usually just to have sex or to genuinely build a relationship with someone. That's it. We don't interact with women on any spectrum other than this person will provide me with sex and this person will provide me with children, because every other variable can be achieved outside of a relationship with the female. There's no condition outside of an interaction with the female that can be achieved beyond those two. That is the true value that women hold when it comes to men. And it's like, oh, that's icky, that's gross that you want to limit or there. Do I need to go date a girl to go buy a car, or do I just need money to go buy a car? The only thing that women can truly give to a man is love, children, and sex. Everything beyond that is not even relevant to even discuss. When women are like, I'm the table. No, you are food, sex, and children. And also you're love, sex, and children. That's it. There's nothing beyond that that I can't get from not you, not a woman, not a female. That's the most valuable thing that we should be trying to engage and exchange with. And it is in that space of raising children together, right? The space of raising children together, that would be the most important value for us to effectively communicate about. But because girls are raised by their parents to not have children before they're 18, and a lot of unnecessary persuasion was put into them to make sure that they don't get pregnant before they turn 18. The same way that the analogy of, I need the kitchen clean, but I'm going to ask him if he could cook dinner instead of directly saying, let's clean the kitchen. Girls spend most of their childhood being given unnecessary biases about ways to prevent them from having sex so they won't get pregnant, instead of simply receiving proper education about the role and responsibility of being the person that will get pregnant and will produce offspring, and how that requires them more than the man to be willing to be obligated to taking care of a child in the event that the guy probably won't want to be a father. But the sad reality is that the desire for young boys to want to be fathers exists at a level that the average person doesn't want to talk about. Like the idea the idea that men and young men don't want to be fathers is mute. The idea that a 18-year-old boy is not intelligent enough to understand that if I put my penis inside of this female's vagina and ejaculate into her, it will produce a child, and I will be obligated to take care of this child for the rest of my life. Contrast against masturbation, which results in no children, is mute. Like the capacity to buy these things is what really frustrates me when it comes to why we need to start having the more adult conversation about these values in society. Because you think that boys are just trying to have sex with as many girls so that they can do what? So that they can experience pleasure? If we want to just exclusively experience pleasure, that's what masturbation is for. It has always existed, even before we're even able to get each other pregnant. So the extra step of, I want to put all this energy into this person that is oppositional to me to have sex with them for the pleasure, if you think critically about it, it doesn't make any sense, right? The guys that don't want to have children are not having sex with girls. And every time a guy chooses to have sex with a female, he sees the capacity and the potential for her to be a mother. But since women are not valuing themselves on their desire to be mothers anymore, they don't see the male aspiration of them as a mother as something that is valuable and important. And it's that's just an unfortunate value, but that's just the way that I see it, at least. I could be wrong, but that's the way I perceive it. That seems to be the way that it correlates and makes sense to me. So, I don't know if there's anything else. I guess I could rant and rave about my story. I was planning on actually talking about my story. I'm in the process of producing multiverse cosmology, the 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 story I'm working on, I'm trying to build an omniverse, and I have a multiverse cosmology for that. And I just realized not too long ago that there's a correlation between what I'm building in my structure and stars. So like stellar evolution goes from, so stars in the universe have long ages, and what science has done is they have taken the different structures of stars that they can observably see and plotted them on a line based on their mass, their temperature, and their luminosity. And when they plotted them on this chart, they find that the vast majority of them fits in a band that they call the main sequence. And in this band that they define as the main sequence, they generated the evolutionary stages of stars from their formation and evolution up to their deaths, and they call it the main sequence. I've been trying to build a multiverse theory for nested infinities of different cosmological extents in the multiverse, parallel universes, parallel multiverses, parallel omniverses structure. And as I tried to correlate the time aspect of this evolution, I noticed that because I'm building what I'm structuring off of cosmology, that the attempt to build my cosmological structure based on the evolution of nothing to something and infinite smallness to infinite largeness correlates perfectly and elegantly with the main sequence of stars. So I've been building a main sequence multiverse cosmology where infinite small non-existent entities give rise to infinitely large existences as well as non-existences, and that's the most important component. So that's that's basically it. And then the Mitosis life system, which I need to really start putting more energy into structure. I say it all the time, and it's basically me ranting. Like, it's the idea that you can. I think my perception of is religion is the justification for people's ability and rights to govern each other. There's no right. I have no right to tell another human being how they should conduct themselves, right? The only thing I'm supposed to be able to do is punch this guy in the face hard enough that he won't try to punch me in the face back. And then in that physical exchange, we have some level of social interaction. And then when I find a girl or when I find a woman to have children with, then I have to punch guys in the face hard enough so that they won't try to take my woman and my child from me for themselves. So we have this social interaction. There is no rules, right? There is nothing that says that a feather can break a glass. There's no rules between men and women that implies that because I said this thing to you, you have to do what I said, right? There's just this inherence from women pushing children out of their vagina and rearing them to adulthood that allows for this universal mental interaction that we call communication, that from which order is defined, right? So because of this, religion is like, you should do what I say, because if you don't do what I say, this entity that is responsible for all of us will punish you. And it's like, who is this energy? Who is this entity? Where does this entity come from? And what authority does this entity have over me? And so all of those answers is basically like God, right? And what has happened with religion over the years is that, and I think it's feudalism actually, Europeans decided, this is just my perception of the way religion works. Europeans decided that because the king and the queen are of royal blood, because they are divinity from God, and because they are divinity from God and they inherit divine blood, and their children can inherit divinity from them, and we know that the king and the queen engage in infidelity like Zeus and all the other Olympian gods and goddesses. We know that the king has bastard children in society, and we know that throughout the entire history of European monarchs that they have always engaged in having bastard sons and bastard daughters inside of the classes of Europeans. by definition of us all being European and all being Caucasian, we are all of divine blood because we are all directly or indirectly bastard children of the kings and the queens of European descent. So since we know that, we should define ourselves as the authoritative rulers of the planet under the banner of Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior of the monotheistic rulers of the world. And the way we will prove objectively, the way that we will prove that if you hit a glass with a hammer, the glass will break, is that we will go on to a crusade to where we will conquer every other nation and we will either force them to be in compliance with us, or we will, through our divine gift and rights, persuade them to obey us. We will define through that we are the rightful heirs of the planet and that we are all administrators of the world, and we will govern everything and we will take everything as property and we will hoard everything as property. To me, that's what religion means. That's how I see it. We call it white supremacy, but the reality is that Europeans and Caucasians have taken advantage of the generosity of other humans. It's easy to say minorities or non-whites or foreigners or alien. It's easy to say that, but the reality is that one group of people have taken advantage of the generosity of other people for their own benefit at a game, right? Europeans aren't just trying to get resources from other people. Europeans are trying to get more resources from other people while giving less than they receive. And that's the foundation of the world we currently live in. And that's the reason why we have the problem we're having. And it is in that energy is the reason why I'd say I don't subscribe to religion, right? Because it doesn't make any sense. You can have the same structure under science without having that implied, I'm right because I am the descendant of God. It would be like, I'm right because I have shown proof that if you hit this glass with a feather, the glass will break. And then within this discourse, we can understand the nature of this feather. Does it actually qualify as a feather, or are we talking about something different? But in religion, as soon as you say, I am right because God says that I'm right, there's no longer any more conversation. And if you're telling me to do something that negatively affects me for your own gain and you justify it by your God, then when I challenge you, right, you have the loaf of bread and you're giving me crumbs. When I tell you I want a slice, I'm not challenging you because you have the loaf of bread. I'm directly challenging God. And now you can go to everybody else that looks like you and argue that I don't want to accept the crumbs that God said that I deserve, and I'm after your whole loaf of bread. And now y'all all will come together to defend against me for wanting more than just the crumbs, because you've all agreed that we will work together to make sure that we have the bread, that we have the loaves, and they have the crumbs. To me, that is like the best analogy I can give for how I see religion. My definition for God is simply just that it is the answer to the question of, is the universe a creation? The answer is either yes or no. I don't think that it is no. I don't see it as no. I don't see the universe as eternal. I see the universe as an evolving dynamic system. And if it is an evolving dynamic system, then it implies that there is a state that would be synonymous to that question. Whether that state is conscious and deliberate or unconscious and reactive is for philosophical debate. But to me, that's how it plays out. And that's just my headspace for it. Whenever I hear people communicate to me the idea of religion and Christianity and Jesus, I just, unfortunately, because of my experiences in life, I just equate it with white supremacy and just, unfortunately, just evil. Like, I just look at the world and I see what's going on in the world and I hold Europeans accountable for it. They're responsible. They're accountable. No one told them. Did God tell them to put Africans in slavery for 300 years, or did they choose to do that? Accountable and responsible. If you want to be mad at me for the things that you feel like, if you think that I should be held accountable for racial slurs and racial stereotypes that were given to me by you, then I feel like I should have the right to acknowledge the history that you gave to me about who you are and hold you to that standard. Nobody told Europeans to write down their evil. They were so confident in the things that they did in history and that they would never have to suffer for it or be held accountable for it, that they started being honest about it. And the most frightening idea about people that lie and deceive and cheat is that they always lie, deceive, and cheat about the things that they're comfortable with. That means that the history that they gave us is the stuff that they were willing to admit to. That's the stuff they were willing to admit to. The stuff that actually was taking place and the stuff that actually was happening was worse than the stuff that they wrote down. And that's just the unfortunate reality of the legacy of Christianity. When the kings and the queens went to the Catholic Church and said, "We want you to fund our crusade," and the church said, "We will fund your crusade only if you spread the word of God across the planet." Both parties fucked up. They both fucked up. Because it could have been a mission of peace. It could have been an exchange of mutual respect. It did not have to be a physical attack on anyone and anybody that disagreed. They didn't have to go through all of the extra steps to manipulate, lie, scheme, and deceive and twist logic and engage in bullshit to achieve a simple objective. And now in the present, we're still arguing and fighting about shit that was put in place thousands of years ago in a negative way. So that, all of that energy is the reason why I created the Michelson Life System. Because at the end of the day, life is not hard. It's not difficult to wake up every morning, go to work your job, get your check, come home, be a productive member of society, live a good life, be honest, be decent, and rinse and fucking repeat. It's not hard. It's not difficult. We should all be able to do that. We should all be able to make enough money so that our exchange in dollars in society will benefit the other people so that you can hire, so that you can have enough people working, and you can do this and you can do that. But unfortunately, we live in a world where one group of people wants to be superior than the other group. And in that superiority, they create unnecessary divisions and classism. And it's deliberate. Like, it's not like it's accidental. It's just designed that way. So I'm Brandon Raven. I need to go run. So as always, my name is Paul Emerson. I appreciate you guys for joining the stream. Every 2 days, I will do this. Hopefully I can get to a better structure. If you have any questions or you want to see anything, just put it in the comment section and I'll address that stuff in the future. So yeah, my name is Paul Emerson and I'm giving you my 2 cents.
Done.